What's going on, guys? It's T coming at you from the webcam. This looks incredible, doesn't it? I just want to give a quick introduction to what you're about to see here. First off, thank you for supporting the channel. Second off, what you'll be seeing from this point on is the full 2-hour interview with David Goodrich. We talk a lot about the TV show, Small Brawl, and some other projects of his. It's a pretty long one, so hope you're just ready to strap in and enjoy. I'm sure some of you guys are going to get some entertainment out of this. I thought about maybe dropping it on a podcasting platform. You got any thoughts on that? Let me know in the comments. But otherwise, yeah, that's about all I got. See ya.
Hello.
Hey, what's up, man?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Let's see. Can I switch this over to... If you're going to do camera, I might as well do camera.
Yeah, it's up to you.
This work? That'll work. Do I have green screen? Ooh, there's so many fancy things I can do here now.
Yeah, I didn't know what any of that was. Yeah, it's crazy. I haven't used Discord in like 2 years.
Yeah, I haven't. I've barely used it at all. But now I'm using it a lot now that I'm chatting with tons of people over at the Twisted Metal Federation.
How long?
Discord.
How long have you been doing the whole Discord and community thing?
That's a good question. On and off for probably 2 years when I was talking with the Vigilante 8 guys.
Yeah.
And just kind of giving them kind of the download on that. But actively with Twisted Metal, I've only started streaming about 2 months ago.
Okay.
And then actively, in those chat rooms on Discord now. But it was just like if someone pinged me, I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I can tell you what happened with like Vigilante 8 or whatever."
Okay.
So yeah, it was just kind of dipping my toe in a little bit, and then now the last 2 months have been going full force. So that's about it.
Yeah, that's interesting because I found you completely on accident because I was doing research for the Small Brawl video I was doing, and I saw you in a YouTube comment talking about I think it was Axels Ending. And I checked your channel, and it was like, oh, you've been recently uploading Twisted Metal videos, like, within the past month, and I thought that was crazy.
Yeah, I've been going hard on it because the show's coming out this Thursday.
Okay. So
I was like, if I'm going to do this is probably a smart time to ride that wave.
Okay, yeah, I just want to ask you right off of the bat, then, what do you think of the show coming out?
I think a lot of the reaction everybody else has had, like, the first trailer that they released, I was just like, oh no. But now the last one I liked.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to say I was totally sold on it, but I liked it a lot more than the first one. They're adding every single character in from the entire franchise.
Are they really?
Yeah, it's not just like TM1, TM2, and Black. Like they have Pizza Boy, and I've seen the very controversial character Drag Queen from like 3 and 4.
No way.
I saw the Small Brawl, Hammerhead Small Brawl truck in there as a cameo.
Is that what your thumbnail was for on your last video with, I think it was Hammerhead?
Yeah, that was my thumbnail. That is an actual image. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
I didn't know what that was.
I need to make it bigger. I'm still trying to figure out how to make thumbnails right.
That's harder than doing the videos.
It can be. It can be harder than doing the videos. Where do I have that image? Yeah.
Okay, because I don't think I've seen the most recent trailer, so I didn't know they were doing all that. Yeah.
Like that's my Hammerhead design that I made for Small Brawl.
That's crazy, man.
Color and everything. You can even see the little shark on the side on the door there.
That's got to be kind of mind-blowing, seeing like 20 years later, your work is still surfacing in some way.
No, it is forever immortalized.
That's awesome.
But I've made a lot of car combat games, so it's kind of cool that there's a bit of a resurgence right now with it.
Yeah, with the show, I didn't really have any expectations going into it at all, so I was like, even if it's like a so bad that it's funny type of show, I'm gonna enjoy it. Just the fact that it's getting any kind of media coverage is crazy, because I thought Twisted Metal was done.
Yeah, well, I hear they're making another one to go with the show. A company called Fire Sprite in the UK.
Hmm.
They haven't worked on a game like this before, and that
Hmm.
worries me. But we'll see if these rumors are true. I think we'll know pretty soon.
Do you think a modern Twisted Metal would work? Do you think there's like an audience for it?
There is, but there's not an audience that there used to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if you could make a budget title and really target the existing audience that's out there, yeah, you could do all right
The
with it. I don't think it's going to be like the next Red Dead Redemption or anything that big, or like the latest God of Wars.
oh yeah,
It's not going to be that big. You might be able to capture some of the oh gosh, Rocket League crowd. I think
hmm.
might be on board with it.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because I was watching it's some video or something, and Jaffe had mentioned he didn't think a modern Twisted Metal game would work because people wouldn't stick around for the endings. I don't know. I don't know if it was the format that he didn't think would work, or if nobody would be into the car combat thing. But I always thought it would work good as like a multiplayer game now.
Yeah, it would. I think it would. If again, I think like it's not going to be a blockbuster. I don't really care that much about the endings, honestly.
Yeah.
For me, like I'm a gameplay guy.
Mm-hmm.
If it's fun and I enjoy playing it and it's got some interesting modes, like I would definitely play it. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you make it a big budget title, I think he's probably right. It's not gonna make it.
Yeah.
You're not gonna make your money back on
Oh
it.
yeah, without a doubt. So with our conversation, I didn't really script too much out, but I did put down some bullet points and some questions just in case we needed to get on track with anything. So I
Okay.
guess one thing I'll shoot at you just to start right up from the top was how did you start off with game development and how did that lead you into Twisted Metal or Small Brawl?
Oh gosh.
Just the cliff notes, I guess.
How did I start in game design? So I was actually working out of the Pentagon on various projects as a contractor, Humvee being one of them. Never thought it would turn into like an actual vehicle being sold on car lots. But I was doing that for a while. They wanted me to go to a risky area as part of my job, and a friend of mine showed me a picture for a game or an art position in the back of like a Game Informer magazine. So I was just like, yeah, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go to the DMZ in South Korea. So I'll just apply and see what happens. And I ended up getting that job as an artist. And then from there, it turns out I had pretty good game design chops. So I started doing a little bit of both.
Hmm.
Um, and then from my first job, I moved over to Luxoflux working on the Vigilante 8 series. And I did a 1 and 2 and the Dreamcast and the Nintendo 64 versions. And I ended up bumping into the Incognito guys at one of the E3s, and we started chatting. And they're like, "Hey, you wanna come work on Twisted Metal?" I was like, "All right." So I ended up moving out to Salt Lake City and taking the job there, and then that's where I started to work on Small Brawl and Twisted Metal Black Online, and um, yeah, those are mainly my two Twisted Metal games that I've made.
Hmm. That's pretty cool because I didn't think there would be any crossover between Vigilante 8 and Twisted Metal. I'm not extremely familiar in Vigilante 8, but I've played it a little bit. So it's kind of funny that
Yeah,
somebody from that team came over and worked on the Twisted Metal title.
I am the only game designer to have worked on both titles. So
Hmm.
it's always funny when I'm ever in various chats and someone will be like, Vigilante 8, sucks. Twisted Metal is so much better. And I'm just like, guess what? I worked on both.
That's
They don't
hilarious.
really have an answer for that.
Right.
So it's like, you're not going to ding me one way or
Hmm.
the other because I worked on both of them.
I think.
But yeah, it's we Vigilante 8 guys. Sony was worried about Vigilante 8.
Hmm.
I got from a good source from one of the lead programmers on 3 and 4 that the whole reason they rushed out Twisted Metal 3 and 4 is because they wanted to beat out Vigilante
Hmm.
8 Second Offense. They were worried that we were capturing too large of a market share.
That's interesting. I don't remember a whole lot about Vigilante 8. When it came to the animations, did it animate like the guns coming out on the cars? I can't remember if that was the thing.
No, we just had them swing around and attach onto the car,
Okay.
but they would auto turret and do things like that.
Okay, maybe that's what
Yeah,
it was.
Vigilante did pretty well. I want to say, like, I could look up actual numbers, but I want to say we probably across all SKUs worldwide sold, I think, around 30 mil or something along those lines.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, Not units, like total money.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you,
Okay.
but I can actually send over those actual numbers. I know a guy who tracks that
Hmm.
stuff. But I mean, we weren't as big as Twisted Metal, but they were definitely missed that chunk of money,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted it back,
Yeah.
which I think is one of the reasons why they hired me, was to kind of kill off the Vigilante 8 series. But we were also kind of done with it at that point,
Mm-hmm.
anyways. But yeah, it's yeah, V8. The kind of the neat thing about Vigilante 8 is and I'm talking more about that than Twisted Metal, but it does kind of relate. The one major selling point on that is we did it with a 5-person team as opposed to like 25 to 30 that they would do it at Sony. So
Oh.
um, that, and in the same time period, so that, and it looked really good. Like visually, it looked so much better than the Twisted Metal.
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely gained a lot of attention for that.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned the weapon thing because I remember it just in the back of my head graphically being an impressive game.
Yeah, visually it was very neat. We made everything in the level, or then the levels, completely destructible. Like the cars, the terrain, the buildings, you name it, you could destroy it.
And was Vigilante 8 a competitor originally to Twisted Metal, or was it just a separate idea?
It was a separate idea. We were the console version of
Hmm.
I-76. So that team was tied up with doing another project. I think it was MechWarrior or something. They couldn't do it, so they gave it to Luxoflux, which was a team that was formed specifically for making the console version. And because we couldn't do as big environments on the console, the arenas kept getting smaller and smaller, and the action, because of that, became more intense, and we kind of organically
Hmm.
became like Twisted Metal. But no one on the team had looked at Twisted Metal except for me.
Hmm. That's interesting. 'Cause I'm sure.
I know a lot of people.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
sorry.
was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say a lot of people would probably make that comparison.
A lot of people call it a clone, but it actually wasn't. The team was aware of Twisted Metal. It's funny because when I joined and I started um, playing through the game, it was kind of sparse. So I was just like, "Hey, Twisted Metal does something like this. We should
Hmm.
probably, add a combo system, add a whammy system, have things that are like freezes and things like that to kind of spice up." So I definitely started pushing it in that
Hmm.
direction quite a bit.
Right. So circling back to Twisted Metal, I saw that you said somewhere that the development time was 7 months, so less than a year.
Yeah, we had a full year.
Okay.
So when I joined, and I thought I was coming on to do the next like black or adult themed Twisted Metal, and so I got up there, and all of a sudden, like, these ideas for a kid friendly version, and um, we started development on it, and I was a bit shocked, like, why are we doing a kid friendly version? Why are we doing this? RC
Hmm.
cars. Um, and I have some old concepts too, where I was trying to steer it back into a little bit of a mature direction. I was trying to have the original adult characters who were so beat up from the original tournament, like being gurneys and in body casts, and the only way they could continue to fight was to use RC cars from their hospital
Oh yeah.
beds. But Sony, once we got that direction, started steering it into the more kid friendly version. They gave us all the concepts for a lot of the kid ideas for it. So, but yeah, I joined that team. I was told that it was going to be PS2 and we could use the black engine. Um, Kind of going back to your 7 month question, I was told we could use the black engine. But then Sony did some research, and about 2 months into development, they said, "Well, we don't want to compete with black. It's still doing well on PS2, and if we release it on the heel, if we release Small Brawl on the heels of Black, it's not going to do well. And that made sense. But then they also said that, our players are aging out of auto combat, which was true. This was happening. We noticed this over, at Activision with Vigilante 8. And they wanted to kind of get the next generations of kids hooked on Twisted Metal. So they found out through research that younger generation was getting the PS1 hand-me-downs from their older siblings who had PS2 and were playing Black. And they felt like they already had that PS2 crowd cornered. So we were told like 2 months into development that we had to down res to PS1, which was just like, oh crap! Like you don't do that during development. Like I had built a bunch of models and textures for the PS2 version, and then on top of that, we were told, oh, because you don't have an engine, we'll give you the Twisted Metal 2 engine to build Small Brawl with. And I was like, okay, this makes me feel a little bit better. Sony looked for the engine, Incognito looked for the engine, no one could find it.
What?
So we actually had to build a brand new engine from scratch during development. And I felt like that probably cost us another several months of development time, because that's like building train tracks and the train while the train is in motion. Like you just don't do that during game development. That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, no kidding. I've seen it said that
So
it was the Twisted Metal 2 engine, so it wasn't the Twisted Metal 2 engine.
it was not. We hired on a lot of programmers for it, the single track guys who wrote the original one. So they were able to throw it together pretty quick. In hindsight, I kind of feel like maybe some of them had kept parts of the engine, which is generally a no-no.
Huh.
Like you're not supposed to keep copyrighted material. But the way they put that engine together so quickly during development, I strongly suspect that they had pieces of it.
Oh yeah.
To put it back together.
Yeah, you can.
So there was that, and then the main Incognito, the guys who did Black, were so burnt out on it, and so was Jaffe, that they all just said, we don't want to do another Twisted Metal. So they decided to have me and another guy spin up a new team, which was like Incognito South, where we would be offsite working on this, but we also didn't have that team, so we had to hire up people during the development cycle and train them up on PS1, which is one of the reasons why I had lead designer and art director, because I was training all the artists on how to do like PS1 textures and PS1 modeling stuff, and we had some crazy restrictions. I think I found some notes where we could only have like 1,000 polys per level.
Yeah.
Due to being PS1 and engine constraints. So I think each of the cards was around 100 polys. That's less than like a finger on modern day characters as far as poly counts go.
That's a hellacious development cycle. You're doing all of this within the span of a year.
Yeah, so that's why I say, it was probably more around 7 or 8 months to develop this, because we lost months on basically down resing to PS1. Had to change a bunch of textures and models for that. We also couldn't find the Black end or the Twisted Metal 2 engine, so that cost us, like, I want to say, weeks to a month. Plus also them having to build it from scratch, hiring up the team during development, which was also, less than ideal. And then the last part of it is, whenever you make a game, usually that last month they lock everything down, give it to QA, and then try to, come up with a beta or a gold master, which is the final product. So we also lost that last month there, where we just locked everything down. You can't add anything new to the game. QA's got to go at it and find everything they can. And if they find game breaking bugs, then you can fix it. But other than that, no new features. So yeah, I want to say we lost a good 4 or 5 months in development due to all the hiccups here and there.
And that's probably what led to the cut endings in the game.
A lot of cut endings for characters. I have write-ups on like Mime and Darkseid and all those endings that didn't make it in. That was part of it. There was also a lack of polish. Piecemeal was a completely unfinished boss. He was supposed to be like Devastator from the Transformers, where when you damage him, he would fall apart on the spot. You'd
Mm,
kill one piece of him, and then once you did that, he would reform back like right there.
yeah.
So he never worked out right, and he's got some weird bugs in him. People say on hard sometimes he spawns in missing a third of his health.
Yeah, I
So
read in the wiki that that was the original plan for him, so that was how it was supposed to go. So
yeah,
it works a similar way, but the order's kind of a little bit different, so it doesn't really make as much sense. But that explains why.
yeah, it was. I mean, we did really good for such a small team too. Like I think we were around, I want to say 10, maybe 12, probably about 10 people working on it, as opposed to like much larger team of like the North
Mm.
studio. So and a lot of them were new to games too. We hired on some artists who'd never worked in games before. So, but we did. In the end, I like what we came up with, given all the constraints.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, you had a pretty impressive product, especially considering the development time. Um, let's see, what was I going to say next? So yeah, it was intentionally developed for a younger audience from the beginning.
Yeah, it was designed to get the next generation into auto combat, because games like Halo were coming out, and the current Twisted Metal crowd was kind of
Hmm.
aging out of it and moving on to more more robust games, I would
Do
say.
you think there was a lot of cross-gen sales, like PS2 players still picking up Small Brawl, even though it was a PlayStation 1 game?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. You what? Just buy? You think the PS2 people, or sorry, your question is you are you asking are the PS2 guys buying the
Yeah,
PS1
like
Small
if people were
Brawls?
just Twisted Metal fans in general and they had already upgraded to the next console, but they still wanted to play that game just because it was a game in the series.
I'm sure they did. And then they're probably the ones who hated it. There's a lot of
Oh
hate for
yeah.
Small Brawl. Yeah, I mean, but what did you expect? Like Twisted Metal's always been this very dark, gritty. Um, it was a little more colorful than 1 and 2, and then it got wacky in 3 and 4, which Jaffe and Scott hated. And then they steered it back into something very, slasher film ish with black, and everybody liked that direction quite a bit. And then what, 3 or 4 months later, a game comes out and it's
Yeah.
cute kids with fireworks, and I mean, but this is all
Mm.
direction from Sony, um, with fireworks, and it's aimed at a much younger audience. That's I always use this example of that's like having a bunch of Dark Souls and Elden Ring fans, and then all of a sudden Elden Ring releases like a kid-friendly version with bright colors and ponies and rainbow swords, and there would be
Mm.
backlash because that's not what people expect from the series. Like a series has generally a feel and a look and a theme, and when people pick something up with that name attached to it, they have
Mm.
certain expectations, and Small Brawl did not meet those
But I think
expectations.
that helps it stands out. Think it helps it stand out a lot too. Um, I think Infinite Warfare was a game in the Call of Duty series that was extremely despised because of the setting, but later on down the road, it kind of gained this cult following because a lot of people like the difference of that with like the futuristic stuff compared to the World War II shooters.
Yeah, that is a good point. And everybody who got Small Brawl as kind of their first Twisted Metal all seem to love it, and that seems to be where a lot of the cult
Hmm.
following comes from. I get lots of comments where people say, "My parents wouldn't buy me Black, but they would let me play Small Brawl," and now it's my favorite. Which is it's funny because we got so much hate on that project, even from Sony themselves, that anybody who worked on the title would just like disavow it. Like, no, 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 I didn't work on that. Don't, that was somebody else. And 20 years later, I'm seeing all these videos popping up going, actually, Small Brawl's better than Twisted Metal 2 and 3 and 4, and it has my favorite level design. I'm just like,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah,
Like, I'm like, okay, now I'll take credit for
yeah. I love that
it.
Toy Story feel to the game. I don't I don't know what it
No,
is
thanks.
about just like being a small thing like in a blown up world has really always been cool to me. I don't know, maybe it's just like a childlike imagination that I get from playing games like that, but it's just really cool.
Yeah, yeah. It seemed to work to some extent. I mean, Sony's plans to draw on the next generation, it worked, and all these people then after playing Small Brawl and kind of growing up with it are now checking out 3 and 4 and playing 1 and 2 and but yeah, looking back, especially playing this game on DuckStation, Small
Mm.
Brawl looks so good. If you get a chance to play it,
Yep,
play it on
yep, that's how I've
DuckStation.
been playing it.
That is what it should have looked like if it stayed on PS2. Going to PS1 and just getting those crappy graphics
And
really
that
hurt
art
us a lot,
style
I
helps
think.
it kind of, I think, stand out. Like it kind of helps it hold up a little bit. Just that cartoony, simple
Hmm.
art style. You get that in a lot of cell shaded
Yeah,
games today, like Dreamcast games.
yeah, yeah. I looking back, I love the art style now. I see stuff in the game that I could never see before with DuckStation, like all these little details the artist put in that I don't even
It's
remember being
crazy
there
how that
before.
works, right?
And it does some magic
Like
there,
all the
man.
text is
Like
nice and crispy and easy to read.
I know it looks good. Like little details, like there's debris coming off the kitchen counter in the
Hmm.
kitchen when you blow it up. I could never see that before on PS1. I'm just like, wow, my artist did
That's
such a good
awesome.
job on it.
Yeah,
It was just lost. It was just
yeah.
lost on the PS1.
It gives you something special to come back to. Like, I don't think like when I first played Small Brawl as a kid, I never unlocked the endurance challenge level. So playing it now, it was like I was getting a little bit of DLC. It was kind of funny to see those. I saw some guy, I think it was in one of
Yeah,
your live streams. He said that you could pretty much make a Small Brawl level out of anything, which I thought was fascinating.
you really could. You absolutely could. Any environment, you know, it could easily be a small brawl
Like
environment.
pool tables had stood out to
Um,
me as one.
we had plans for a
Mm,
bumper pool table at one point, as a particular level that we could have done it in, but it would have been great to do like more outdoor organic things too. But I don't think the PlayStation could have handled
yeah,
that.
I'm sure you ran into a lot of that.
Oh yeah, it's extreme limitations. I was very disappointed when they. I get it when but I was disappointed when they pushed us from PS2 to PS1. I was like, fuck, I want to
Hmm.
work on PS2 games now, and I'm right back to
Yeah,
PS1
because like
games.
the way I guess you could think of it is like if you're working on PS1 at the time, you're not really thinking of the limitations when you don't have much to compare it to. But the PS2 is already out and people are already putting stuff out like Twisted Metal Black.
The team did get to move on, though. So the Small Brawl team did actually get to move on to Twisted Metal
Mm-hmm.
Black Online. So we made that one too for PS2, which is pretty
Was it
cool.
frustrating at the time working on Small Brawl and getting it released? Were you just kind of disappointed with how it turned out? Mm.
A little bit of both. It was in the heat of development. It was we lost so much time just trying to get the studio's footing. Things weren't always working out as intended. The game's very buggy and a lot of features got cut. So at the time, I was just like, this game is gonna suck. It's gonna be poorly received, and it was for sure. Um, it's just really like it feels like the last 3 or 4 months that people are just like, yeah, Small World's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the time we were very disappointed in it. It barely broke even, I think, too. It only sold like 150,000 copies compared to other games like Black
Mm.
that were selling millions.
Um. Yeah. Speaking of cut features, I read in the wiki that this was the only one without a flamethrower, and I noticed that a lot of the specials kind of seemed like they were a lot of variants of the ricochet were used. So were there a lot more weapons that were planned that were cut?
Um, there was not. I just didn't think of a good
Mm.
flamethrower use. Someone actually brought up in chat one time, like, "Oh, you could have used a
A
sparkler," and I was like, "Oh
sparkler.
crap."
Oh, that'd been genius.
Yeah, we could have done that. You know, because of the time constraints, there was a lot of ricochet type weapons because we were just reusing the code over and over again. I think like halfway through development, because the programmers were so entrenched on making the engine, that I was told, like, don't come up with new specials. And I would always kind of go in and trading horses a bit and be like, well, what if we use Sweet Tooth Bounce, but we added this? Or what if we took Spectre's ghosts and we turned them into flaming paper airplanes instead, and changed the seeking in the code? Things like that. We were just reusing all kinds of bits. I was looking at all the specials going, can we take this piece from this special and this piece from this special, combine them, and then change the art? Will it feel different? Because we just didn't have time to do special instances of code for everything, like for the weapons and stuff.
I didn't even think about it until one of your recent videos where you said that Spectres and Crimson Fury specials were the same, just altered code.
Yeah, it fires 3 projectiles. They fly through the air. You just reduce the seeking on the ghosts, and then add fire from the napalm, and you got a whole new special there.
The level design seemed a little bit smaller. Was that a conscious decision?
As far as just arena base size,
the arenas seem like they're a little more condensed.
Yeah, those are PlayStation limitations. So we couldn't make it that big and still have a lot of stuff in it. If you look at Gridiron Gore, while that one's a lot bigger, it's very empty. So you can either have a lot of stuff to interact with and have a small level due to poly counts, or you can have a big empty level. Like those are kind of your choices there when it comes to making stuff for PlayStation 1. I think it kind of worked in our advantage because if those levels were much bigger, I don't think the action would have been as tight. And if you play Gridiron Gore, it's just like you could drive around for a while without bumping into somebody. And if you're down to the last 2 cars, like it's painful to go from one end of the football
that's kind of the most
another.
boring map in the game, maybe. But I like that you could hear the crowd scream when you killed people. That was a nice detail.
Thanks. Yeah, that was the one level I did not make in Small Brawl. I did all the level design except for that one. That was one of the producers over at Sony who was just like, I want to do a level design. And I'm like, okay, I'm listening. And he's like, let's make another Holland because everybody loved that. And I was like, this is terrible. So I still had to go in and add like the football helmets and the guy on the lawnmower and the benches and stuff like that, just to have something in the environments. Because in that,
so you had to give it all the character.
But
yeah, I think it played better for the levels to be that size, though. I think that works out pretty good because I kind of found myself getting tired of driving around in some of the other Twisted Metal titles with the bigger open levels. I feel like the action was a little more consistent.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know if this was a conscious decision, but the AI actually kill each other in Small Brawl.
They do. They also used to suicide more. But yes, so I have the hard fast rule that I try to follow. I don't allow AI to cheat. They have to play by the same rules as the player. So unless it's like a particularly special boss or something. So they'll fight each other, they'll damage each other. If they run out of weapons, they have to go pick them up. They don't have unlimited freezes and all that kind of nonsense. So they'll run around picking stuff up. But as far as like them killing each other, we did reduce the amount of damage they take from fighting each other and from environmentals, just so they wouldn't kill each other too often. We didn't want the player running off and hiding or just doing donuts around the environment as all the enemies.
But I think having that back and forth element adds a lot to the game, because the one thing in Black the one takeaway that I really hated from Black was that you could tell that it was just everybody dogpiling on you and they never hit each other. I'm pretty sure I left the game running for like half an hour and none of the AI had taken any damage from each other. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, a lot of the Twisted Metals do that quite a bit. I was not a fan. I don't like doing that too much. But yeah, I mean, I saw just the other day the AI fighting each other and causing damage. We used to have ram damage with the environment in there. Like if you ran into a wall, you would take a little bit of damage, but we had to pull all of that out because the
They just kept
AI
running
kept
into
killing
walls.
themselves. Like they kept running in the walls. They would come zipping around a corner with like a fraction of like a tiny sliver of health, and they'd bump a wall and just die. It was like,
I'm sure you had a
all right,
lot
we
of
need
them
to take
flying
that
off the
out.
treehouse.
Yeah, the treehouse was one. Like Twister used to be able to be more deadly because she would pick up cars and slam them around into the walls and just shred them. So we had she actually doesn't do any damage if she's beating them against the walls, but they will ram each other in her
They'll
special. So
they'll
you'll
ram
see
each
some of
other
that
in
going
her
on.
special.
Yeah, so we kept ram damage in there. So if she picks up like Warthog and Darkseid as they're spinning around in her tornado, if they bump into each other in that tornado, they will cause each other
Oh,
damage,
that's
extra
really
damage on
OP.
top of her special. Yeah, it used to be worse when they would take damage from hitting walls because she would just drive up to a wall then, and then they would hit each other and hit the wall and cause just
Oh, that's
insane
great.
damage to everything there.
I realized that Twister was one of the best characters because you could just go on the treehouse level and send the AI off. That's how I quickly won all the endurance challenges recently.
Yeah, her and
Yeah.
Slam are great there.
A little bit of an oddball question while I'm thinking about it. The skybox in the Easy Death Oven level, does that have the treehouse outside of it? That's the treehouse level on the
It
outside of it.
does. It's a flat PNG card of it.
Oh
But
wow.
yes, that's I wanted to. We had that idea, and I wanted to carry it across all the levels, but during development, like I think I thought of that idea a little late. I think we built that level and like, what are we going to put outside the window? And just like, why don't we just
Okay.
use the
I'm gonna
treehouse
pout.
out there? But it would have been. Oh, sorry. It would have been fun to like tie all the levels together. Like maybe the kid on the merry-go-round, if you send him flying off into the environment, in a later level, he like comes crashing through the
Yeah.
ceiling or something. Would have been great.
Keep it cohesive. Are there other little details like that in other levels that you can think of?
I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to see the other levels. I mean, every level has little details, but none like
What's a
that.
little detail in
Somewhat.
a level that you think most people don't even think about? Maybe they've missed.
I mean, we did things like mini golf where you can see the eyes in all the bushes around as you're driving around. We have a name on the brain jar in shock therapy level. I'm trying to think what other good ones. I would have to look real quick. I don't know. I don't have great answers for you
I'm
on that
surprised
one.
that you still have like a book of notes or whatever. I feel like a lot of people would have lost that stuff to time by now.
I kept it for sure. It has a bunch of cut
Mm.
ideas too for Small Brawl. It's probably a good thing they were cut though, because I think they were too ambitious for
You
what
got some
Small
cut
Brawl was.
concept art.
A lot of cut concept art, a lot of cut designs. A lot of people don't know that if you look at the Small Brawl radar, it's kind of cut into 4 sections, and that's because I want to try something new with the shields, where you could shield in a specific section, and it would reduce the cost of the shield, but also if you did it like one section with the right timing, you reflect attack back at the attacker. And I think that design was something I was carrying over from Vigilante 8, and thinking that I was going to be working on another more mature version of Twisted Metal. But then when we got Small Bro, I was just like, well, I can't use this. Like, no way kids could do this. But yeah, hold
Okay.
on one second. Let's see if I can. But
Oh man.
yes, I
The
still
classified
have.
documents.
Oh wow, the green screen's going crazy with this. But yes, it's a binder and a bunch
Oh
of
man.
documents in here. cut endings, original, like a lot of the character art that nobody has seen.
Yeah, I
for like
saw
mine
I
and
saw
things
that
like
just
that.
today that you said mine was a girl. I never would have even thought about that.
Yeah, it's and she has a pretty funny ending. I'll do a reveal on that someday.
Was the ending
Someday
ever
soon.
captured? Mm.
No, it didn't get that far. I basically just wrote up a bunch of mini scripts that we could eventually use if we got time to do the
Yeah, that'll make for
cinematics
some
for them.
really good content. You're sitting on a gold mine.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and then kind of going back to like stuff that was cut. So you may have heard this by now, but Warthog was supposed to be a
Mm.
like World War II tank, like a Sherman tank, and we also had Grasshopper planned, but we had the cinematic model for Warthog. We had not made the one for Grasshopper yet. So during development, we just didn't have time to make new cinematics for her, which means she was going to get cut. We didn't have Warthog's tank yet built, so he was going to get cut. So as kind of a last ditch effort to get one more character in, I gave Grasshopper's car to Warthog. And then we reused Crimson Fury special, just like we
Oh, I
did with
didn't know that.
Spectre's to make his special. Yeah, so Spectre was the original. I didn't like Crimson Fury. I was going to cut him, but for some reason we ended up putting him in. He got a version of Spectre special as a result of kind of getting slid in. And then Warthog, being one of the very last characters, got Crimson Fury's special. So Spectre is the source of
I like
those
the
three
flaming
specials.
paper planes. I think that's a neat gimmick.
Yeah,
If it's the theme.
yeah, cool. Yeah, I wanted to give him a laser like some of the original specials he used to have, but didn't happen. I also don't think I could have. I wasn't thinking of like a kid version of it back then. Though I suppose I could have done
Laser
like a
pointer.
laser
Yeah.
pointer or something.
Man.
A very powerful
Did you
laser
guys get a
pointer.
lot of stuff that was turned down by Sony that you wanted to use but you couldn't because it was too dark?
There was some stuff in there for sure. Like we had a hula lamp in the Christmas level, and they were just like, this is a bit too risque for a kids game, so we pulled that out and made it a generic like Christmas themed lamp. We had a shotgun above the fireplace in the Christmas level also, and they said no guns, so we pulled that out. It seemed perfectly natural for Salt Lake City
Right.
because everybody was like hunters up there and stuff, and they always had like shotguns on display and things. It's not that way anymore. I was just up there recently.
Yeah.
It is become very modernized. We did that. Axel's ending we had to cut. I don't know if
That's
you've
how I
seen
found your
that
comment.
at all. And a lot of people assume it's because he's walking over a field of rakes, and that wasn't it. It was
he's
his
disabled.
line that where he's disabled. It was a line where he said, "Calypso, you said you could make me walk again," and it was just like, "Nope." So, which is funny that they pulled that because I believe they wrote that part of the line. They also came up with the Axel
Really?
concept art too of him being in the wheelchair. So these were their initial nuggets, and I guess when they saw it in the end, they're just like, "This is going to be
That's interesting
problematic."
because I feel like a lot more stuff kind
So
of flew back in 2001 than it would today.
yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that statement. I was a bit surprised they cut that too. They also didn't like the mean spiritedness of him walking
Yeah.
across a bunch of rakes, which I thought was funny. That was my little thing that I slipped in there. I was a big Simpsons fan, and they had a gag with Sideshow Bob where he's got huge clown feet naturally, and he's walking across like a field full of rakes to get somewhere. So I was just like, I thought that was super funny. I'm like, okay, we can lift this as kind of
Yeah,
a
it
nod to
sucks
the
that that
Simpsons
didn't
and
make
stick it
it.
in there.
Out of all the content that was hard to actually be able to fit into the game at the time, you actually had an ending. I wonder how that ending surfaced.
Yeah. My guess,
Hmm.
probably someone over at Sony. Producers have a tendency, I've noticed in the game industry, to keep a lot of content, no matter how what the circumstances are around a game, and then 20 years
Yeah.
later,
You
whoop,
start hearing
there
about
it
a
goes
lot
out
of
on the
stuff
internet.
surfacing. But I guess it's good for preservation.
Yeah, that's that was actually another reason why I started streaming recently, was just to capture a lot of this stuff
Mm.
before it's gone
Dude, there's
gone
so
into the
much
ether.
that you probably are sitting on that people would be interested in, and there's probably so many people that would love your channel that just don't know your channel's there yet.
I know, but my channel's not growing very fast. It took off for a bit, and
Mm.
now it seems to be stuck around 250 people. And I was like, just get me to 500, and then I can put up a cheap paywall and show off all the stuff that I have.
Yeah.
Because I want a small paywall there, just so rando searches from Sony or anybody else who might be upset about
Yeah.
this just don't easily find it. Um, I don't think they're gonna have an issue with it, but you always have to be careful with NDAs. I mean, it's been released and it's 20 years old, so I think it's safe, but you
Hmm.
never know when they're gonna get
Yeah,
a hang
better
up their
safe
butt
than
about it.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um hmm. Looking through my questions here.
Oh, are you
Yeah, I
recording
was
this or are
recording
you
it.
taking notes?
If you don't want me to use it, I can
Okay,
just use the
cool.
notes, but yeah. I
No, go
figured it
ahead.
would be better to
Go.
just let it roll right off
Just
the cuff instead of being like, "Oh, I'm recording right now." So, because then maybe you're talking a certain way and
That's
you're thinking
perfect.
differently. But I wish I had more to talk about, but I think I'm out of questions now. We could talk Twisted Metal all day.
Uh,
What about the Twisted Metal Black multiplayer? How did you get into that?
so, Twisted Metal Black, the online, it was kind of the same story with Small Brawl. Like Jaffe and Incog were so burnt out on Twisted Metal
Hmm.
Black, they also weren't getting along very well at the end of that project. Jaffe's been kind of transparent
Hmm.
about that lately, so I will also mention it. Otherwise, I wasn't going to be like, oh yeah, they were fighting, and then Jaffe's like, what? But yeah, I mean, I remember when I took the job at Incog, he said he was happy that I was taking over, Twisted Metal, because he was burnt out and he wanted to go work on this small, unknown
Hmm.
project idea of his called God of War. And I was like, all right. So he went off to do that, and then Incog was working on War of the Monsters and Downhill
Hmm.
Domination. I think Warhawk 2 at the time. So they gave the Small Brawl guys the Twisted Metal Black Online project, and because they just didn't want to work on it anymore. It also wasn't going to make any money. It was kind of one of these loss leader things where Sony wanted to
Hmm.
move their adapter, and in order to do that, they're just like, well, let's package a game with it that will feature the adapter, playing online. So we made a version of online, and me and Kirk Baum and some of the other guys threw our heads together, just like, okay, we can't just have a multiplayer Black. Like everybody's played Black to death. We have to do new things. So we came up with like relics that give you special abilities while you hold them. Things like that do double damage or cloak you, or you know make it impossible for weapons to lock on. That really kind of changed the gameplay. And I actually just recently did a video on that one, if you are curious. But then we also added a bunch of modes in there, um, where it's not just pure combat. Like we wanted to
Hmm.
change things up because Black was a hard game, and it was frustrating to a lot of people. So we put in things like, okay, if you're not good at killing, maybe you just run around and collect stuff for points, and the longer you hold on to it, that's how you can win. Or we can change things like, instead of kills to win a match, it's damage. So if you're get someone's coming in and kill stealing from you a lot, but you're really good at damage output, you can still win those matches. So we added every possible parameter like we could think of at the time to allow players to customize the game exactly how they wanted, gameplay style. So we also have plans to put in team versus team. So like red team versus blue team, where you could form little groups and go after each other, and then last man standing modes. I also had an idea for players versus
Hmm.
player versus boss. So we would stick minion in there, and everybody would fight to kill the boss or do the most damage to the boss first, and then whoever did the most damage to it by the time it died would win the match. But the boss would fight back, and you could also attack and try to kill other players doing it to like force them to lose time with a respawn, so you could do more damage to the boss, things like that. And then I also went in and retuned all the vehicles, and the weapons and how they behaved and damage and things like that. So the last video I did on the relic stuff I mentioned, like I'm not sure Jaffe would approve of all the changes I made. And then one of his biggest fans was just like, no, he actually admitted black was too hard. And I was like, oh. And I was like, I realized me and the team made a much more friendly version of black that was easier, because of the retuning and stuff. And a lot of the retuning came from, because we had to be on the dial-up modem. If there was any kind of latency, cars were like your enemy was actually not where they really were. They could be like 30 feet away. So straight fire weapons were almost useless. So we had to make everything seek. We gave a lot of weapons radiuses, gave them, more turreted action, things like that. So really what we ended up doing was giving very large hitboxes and explosive radiuses and seeking to almost all
Yeah,
the
I'm sure
weapons in that
developing
game
a
now.
multiplayer game all the way back then was pretty different than it is today.
Oh yeah, it was. Especially we had to accommodate
Dial up.
four person dial up. Like literally, yeah.
Mm,
If you had good internet, you could go to 8 players, but dial up, like you had to go for minimum spec on it, which means embracing the
mm.
worst possible scenario, which was 4 person dial up, and it was
Oh
it
yeah,
was a
I believe it.
painful
It
play
was so funny that
experience.
you said that they were moving Twisted Metal Black online just to sell the modem because it was a loss leader. Man, how times have changed.
Yeah. I mean, Sony was mainly a hardware company back then. They wanted games that were flashy and really kind of showed off like how good their system was, and they would take a loss on certain games
Hmm.
in order to, show that off. I think like Eye of Judgment was another good example of that.
Hmm.
It was to sell their camera. So if you're not familiar with it, it's a really cool looking game. You would buy cards, you would put them down in front of the camera, and then if you look at your TV screen, like those cards would come to life and
Hmm.
attack other
Yeah, I'm not
cards.
familiar with that
It
one.
was a pretty cool game, but generally, generally peripherals do not sell well. Um, People are willing to buy a console and a couple of controllers, and that's about it. If you have to buy, you know,
Yeah.
what was it on Xbox, the Connect, where they tried to do all the move games? None of those ever sell well. Like no one wants to spend another
Mhm.
$100 for
Are you much of
additional
a VR
hardware. They'd
guy at
rather
all?
spend that on a game. I have the sets.
Oh
I've
man,
played it in the past, but
that
it
sucks.
makes me sick. It gives me motion sickness.
Yeah.
I mean, even VR hasn't fully taken off yet.
Yeah.
They're trying to make it work with things like meta and stuff, but I think until it's like Minority Report, small pair of glasses that look like normal glasses
I'm just
that work
wondering
just
what
like VR, I
Sony's
don't think it's
doing with
really
the
going to take off.
PSVR because it seems like they made the hardware, they went to all that trouble, they dropped it, and it doesn't really seem like they're pushing to make a lot of content for it, like AAA first party.
Yeah, and they probably ran the numbers and said, okay, here's how much it has sold for this, for the VR headset. It's let's say 100,000. Okay, now we have to make a high end game for it, and that's going to cost millions.
Mm.
We're probably not going to get a return on profit. at that point, we're
I love
we're just
VR.
going to lose money.
It's just hard to get people
So,
into it.
it's neat. It's neat. I like it.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I'm old school. Like,
Yeah.
I
I
like
love
couch
sitting on the
co-op
couch
is
with a
probably one of
controller.
my favorites. Just sit there. Yeah, it's but yeah, so that's how we got into Twisted Metal Black Online. Um, and then yeah, after that, like I ended up leaving Incog to go back to Luxaflux to work on True Crime series after that.
I played a
And have been
little bit
making
of
games
True
ever
Crime.
since.
I'm not extremely familiar with it though. I probably played like 10 minutes of it at a friend's house, then maybe I've watched a retrospective or two on it, but that was just like the GTA clone where you play as a cop, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Our the big gimmick in that game too is we use Google Maps to actually make realistic city layouts. So it's like 100%
Oh shit, I
accurate as
didn't
far as
realize
like
that.
driving the streets and the names and everything. Yeah, that was a neat thing we did there. But yeah, I mean, after that, I don't think I did a worked on a Crash Team Racing game that was pretty cool back in the day.
Mm.
That got canceled, unfortunately. But I haven't done auto combat since then.
So what are you
Like I
working
would
on
love
now?
to do another one at some point.
Mm.
Right now, I'm in
Yeah.
between jobs. That's why I'm streaming so much. The company I was at ran out of VC venture capital funding, and I think they laid off like
That
3/4 of the
sucks.
company. So I am using this time
Mm.
wisely to
Gives you time to
make as
explore
many
the
videos as I
creativity a
can.
little bit.
Yeah, for
Got me an
sure,
hour with you, so that's pretty
for
cool.
sure.
I never thought I'd have this opportunity, so I appreciate you reaching
There
out
you go.
or just agreeing to jump on here with me. This is really cool.
Yeah, no
Mm.
problem. It's fun. I like the community around it, and they for the most
Well
part,
behaved.
they're good people and well behaved. I'm not as big as Jaffe, so I'm
Yeah.
sure I'm not.
Oh
I
yeah.
haven't seen the
Yeah, he's
worst
going
of
through it,
what
I'm
the
sure.
internet has to offer.
Did you ever have much communication with Jaffe at all?
Yeah. I never worked directly with him. Like we never saw him on
Right.
Small Brawl or online, Just Middle Black Online. He was too busy with God of War and other stuff. I've had like lots of conversations, and I say lots, but probably like 10 conversations with him. Um, when I would visit Sony Santa Monica, because I knew people there, interviewed with him and his team at one point before I went to Incog, and then a couple
Okay.
interactions
That's
over
pretty cool.
at Incog itself. Yeah, and bumped into him a couple times at GDC
Mm-hmm.
too, but
Yeah.
it's not like we chat
Different worlds.
very much. Different worlds. But yeah, I mean, back then we used to keep tabs on each other. I think V8 was and still is to some point a thorn in his side. I hear from
Mm.
people on his
Oh,
on
that's
his
great.
Discord that they're always asking him V8 questions. He's
That's
just like
perfect.
stop.
Oh yeah.
It will
Can't wait
forever
for
haunt his
Vigilante
dreams.
3.
But it would be a fun time to. I would love to chat with him one point and at one point. Um, but yeah, that'd be cool. And it's funny because I guess after I left Incog, I didn't really keep contact with anybody or really look that much at what Incog was doing. And I heard that
Mm.
2012 was kind of a giant shit show over there. Um, that I think, at least just to some of the old guys I talked to, like Kirk and um, all the
Oh
guys have left the
damn.
industry after
So
that
yeah,
that
it
that last
was
Twisted
that
Metal.
Incog that worked on
Like,
the reboot.
uh, it was well, what was it? I'd have to look at it, but Scott left Incog to go form Eat Sleep Play.
Hmm.
So he sold Incog to Sony. They wanted to do another project. I think halfway through the project, and don't quote me on this because I haven't really read up on it extensively. I'm just from what I've heard from other people, they left to go form Eat Sleep Play. Incog faltered after that, losing a lot of key people, and then I think went under at that point. And then they tried what was it, Harbor City? Was it Harbor was the Incog, and then 2012 was Eat Sleep Play.
Yeah, Harbor City
Or
was
I could have
supposed to
them. I
be
could have them
the
backwards,
sequel,
but
right, to Black.
so they left.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Yeah. But yeah, they left to go. So all the Incog guys, I think Incog went under. A lot of them were pretty sour about that. And then Eat Sleep Play guys, that project didn't go well. I think they got super burnt out on it, and then all of them left the industry. Even Scott Campbell's out of the industry now. And then Jaffe left. He's not doing games anymore. He's doing
Jaffe's just chilling.
He's doing
it
his
seems.
successful streaming thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for him. Good for him. A couple of the guys are still left in the game industry, but they're over at Avalanche working on the Hogwarts Legacy stuff, which is also in Salt Lake.
Good.
But
yeah, well, it's a Harry Potter game,
pretty
so
good.
Of course it would sell regardless. But
yeah, and good for them. Like, but yeah, it's
I think that
it's
reboot
sad. Like
just
all
came
the
out
other
at the wrong
guys are
time,
gone.
and I mean, maybe it wasn't a perfect game, absolutely, but just like a multiplayer game like that, if it was like a free to play within the past 5 years, I feel like it would have done a lot better.
Yeah, I heard they went through some troubles too, where it was just going to be multiplayer, and I think Sony said, "No, we want single player in there too." Like halfway through development, and that's always a recipe for disaster. Like once you have a game planned out and it's scheduled, and you're in development, and you have that time frame, like you got to stick to the plan. You can't.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't like suddenly change the whole dynamic of the game in there. And single player is pretty. Single player and multiplayer do have their own challenges. Multiplayer, you got to have good network code, and the cars have got to be really balanced. Otherwise, certain cars are going to dominate, and people are going to be kind of butthurt about that. Where single player, cars don't have to be as balanced. Like you can just whoop on the AI, and it's a lot of fun. But you also have to make AI. Like you have to make them smart. They got to be able to drive the levels, interact intelligently. So it sounds like they got a double whammy on that one.
I think Jaffe had said he didn't plan on having single player at all in that until Sony came up with it. And then they're like, okay, I guess we'll throw together a third of a campaign and make bots. I don't know if bots were in it or were going to be in it regardless.
No, that's rough.
With the multiplayer component, but
yeah, it seems like you would have to. We did that with Twisted Metal Black Online. We made sure we had bots in there because if you had to wait too long in the waiting room to kind of fill out the roster, people would start dropping out, and then eventually they would just empty out of one of the waiting rooms. So we added up to 3 bots so that you could fill it out if it's just like, okay, we got enough players, and we want 3 more.
Twisted Metal Black Online has like a small like cult following today, right? That play the game online.
Yep, it's Twisted Metal Alliance.
So when are you gonna jump on there?
I chat with them every now and then. Some point. I tried last weekend, and something's going on with the servers, and it's not working. So I'll try again. Maybe. Oh, they actually play tonight, I think. I'll see.
I might look into that. It seems like fun, but I also know that I'm just gonna get destroyed by people who know the game inside and out.
They can be very hardcore. They have very specific rules for their matches. You could always jump over into Vicarious Nick's Discord. There's actually a lead programmer from 3 and 4 in there too, who we chat with now and then. But we do Twisted Metal Black Online matches there every now and then, and it's we are less skilled than the TMA guys. That could be an option. They're also doing not necessarily for your stream, but tomorrow night we're doing a play Twisted Metal Black online with the community, so people can jump in as they
That's
want.
tomorrow.
We'll play around with them.
Okay.
It's tomorrow. Let me see. Can I? I'm so bad with Discord. How
Discord
do I
makes me
find
feel
a link
old.
to this Discord?
How old are you?
Well, it makes me feel worse then.
I was gonna say you
I'm
don't
not
look
gonna
that
say.
old.
I'm older than Jaffe
I
though.
was thinking, man, you must have started on Twisted Metal when you were young.
Yeah.
Oh man, you don't.
I will
You
let
don't look
people
a
believe
day
that, and
over
that'll be my
35.
secret. The there you go. I'll take that. Yeah, that's the one thing about in the game industry is it is very ageist. Like once you're over 40, your time is ticking. Because they want young people who can be in there without
That's
families who are
nuts.
willing to do 16-hour days if they have to.
Mm-hmm.
And if you got a wife and kid, you're not going to do
Yeah,
that.
it'll be
Or
a
you're gonna get
nightmare at home.
divorced. So that's why I guard that secret very, very carefully. You could actually don't put that part in the video.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you coming on and chatting with me. I'll let you go so you can get something done tonight.
Yeah, no problem. It's been fun. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
hopefully you edit this in a way that I sound reasonably intelligent. Not too many ums and
Yeah.
ahs.
So, when I was doing the video, I originally planned on just doing it without even having any involvement of you in it at all, because I didn't expect to actually be able to jump on a podcast with you or a video call or whatever.
Mhm.
So what I'm going to do is just preface the video with, "Hey, I had the conversation with this guy," and then throughout the video, the retrospective, I'm just gonna splice in talking points, like answers to questions, and put that along with the video. And I think that'll work out pretty well.
All right, that sounds good. Yeah, it's definitely been a trip down memory lane.